Hi, welcome to my 14th place San Jose Regionals deck profile. I was playing Zefra deck. There were 280 people that attended the regionals, and I just want to preface this video by saying that I chose to play Zefras because they were the deck that I knew the best at the time, and I was going off of mostly just theory, which is why it may look like some of the cards that I run are not typically put in a Zefra deck, and that the playstyle I used was quite different than how the deck is normally played. Just prefacing it with that because most people would say that a bunch of things I run are suboptimal. And let's get into it. So starting off with the monsters, I ran 10 hand traps, triple ogre, triple blossom, triple gamma and driver, as well as the max C. And the hand trap package was very, very good to me. Gamma was probably the best card, hands down, because there are multiple points when you're trying to set up a Zefra board that someone will hit you with a hand trap, such as Ogre on the Zefrath scale effect, Maxi on completed scales, and Ash Blossom on a Terraforming or Oracle or Providence search. Every time I resolved Gamma on my turn, I won, but I was willing to lose the driver access if I felt like I had no response to or the ability to break a spiral board with my current hand if the helix effect was going off. Alright, onto the Zefras themselves. I played triple Zefrath. Its scale effect is to grab a Zefra from my main deck, put it face up on my extra deck, and copy the scale until the end of the turn. Zefra New, when it's pendulumed or destroyed in the main monster zone, I can search a Yangzing or Zefra spell or trap. That's your plus engine. Zefraxi, triple Zefraxi, because you want to turn things into tuners because you have access to some very powerful synchros with Zefras. And then for the last Zefra monsters I ran the 5 good ones. One Zefra Naga on Pendulum Summon or Graveyard, I bounce a scale to hand. Fraxiton, Scrap Dragon for face down cards. Thubin, Scrap Dragon for face up cards. Zefra Ampilica, Revive a Zefra from Grave, and Zefra Wendy. And then for the non-Zefra cards, I ran Armageddon Knight, Destrudo, Mermer. This package allows me to pump out 6.5k damage just off of Armageddon Knight effect and combo into Yazi, which will then, on destruction, grab me Mermer, which I can then, use to generate 3 water tokens. And then I also ran Gofu because I wanted to generate more Link tokens. And then MVP of the day, 2 Eater of Millions. Eater of Millions was really good to me. It provided me non-targeting banish, face down, got consistently pumped up to 4k plus because of all the cards that were being banished by Desires as well as evenly matched. I got evenly matched so many times, but this deck can tank it to a pretty good degree. And they kept evenly matching me with Eater of Millions out, but it just served to pump up Eater of Millions into some ridiculous attack. Okay, now on to spells. I ran double Terraforming, triple Oracle. Oracle searches for a Zefra monster on activation. You only run 2 terraforming because you don't really want to break with drawing multiples of any combination of these, because you can only activate Oracle once per turn. Triple Zefra Providence. Providence allows you to search any Zefra card, as well as acting as a Return of the Dragon Lords for turns after it was sent to the graveyard. Raigeki, because it's a good value card in case you go second. Double Spell Shattering. Spell Shattering was very good to me. It felt like a better Cyclone because it would, deal 500 damage to your opponent instead of you having to pay 1k in cost. And I could consistently pop multiple Spiral spell cards with it, which was pretty good. Double Scapegoat, because I built this deck in part to counterswing quite heavily, and that's what Scapegoat allows me to do, because I ran enough Link monsters in order to use Scapegoat as a 1-card Borolo Dragon. And Reinforcement of the Army, so that I can search out my low scales Zefra Thubin or Armageddon Knight, so I can Yazi Mermere combo or even Black Rose them. And then Triple Desires, I had to borrow the third one from my friend. Thank you, Desmond Chu. And I ran Desires because this deck really needs to try to get the 2-card combo of Pendulum Summoning out Zefra New out, so that you can get your engine running. And Desires, lets you draw 2 cards. And most of the time I didn't really care what I banished. And I don't think that I ever had an actually bad banish with Desires all day. And yeah. Okay, let's get on to the traps. I ran 4 traps in total. 3 of them were the standard ones: Pillars, Negates and Spins, Divine Strike, Negates and Destroys. These 2 only negate spell and trap activations, as well as monster effect activations. And War is a scrap dragon you can activate from hand, provided that you have 2 Zefra scales on board. The last card was Unending Nightmare. Unending Nightmare, for me, is a very good value card. It essentially solidifies games, because in this meta right now, everyone's pretty dependent on stuff like field spells like Resort, Light Stage, and Pendulum Magicians need to set up proper scales, so you can use Unending Nightmare to just pop those scales and prevent them from being able to Pendulum Summon. Okay, on to the extra deck. I ran M7. You usually Xyz into this using a level 6 Synchro as well as Zefra New. I also ran Mistar Boy so that I could link into it using Mermere tokens. Proxy Dragon, Mrs. Radiant for not only Scapegoat, but the 2 Yang Zing Zefras are also Earth, and there are times when they just choose not to do anything meaningful to get your Zefra New off the board. And then if you normal summon a Zefraxi and then link into this, you can just Pendulum out 2 cards now at that point. Double Link Spider, because I wanted Scapegoat to be a 1-card Borolo Dragon, and Borolo Dragon because it's good at counterswinging back the tempo of the game in your favor. And then for synchros, I ran Chenbara because I could make that with the Mermere combo. Helps me game. Metaphysics Horus. You can steal an opponent's monster with its effect, as well as negate 1 face-up card's effects on the field permanently. Unfortunately, the steal effect does not work on a monster immune masterpiece, but it's still a really good card for just swinging the board back into your favor. Yazi, because it can clear itself from the extra monster zone. You can summon it off of Destrudo combo, and it lets you grab a worm from your deck and special summon it if it dies. Black Rose, because you can nuke the field. Because Providence says it protects Zefra cards from being destroyed once, this includes scales. So you can use Black Rose and then protect your entire board with the scales. Sorry, with the Providence that you banish from grave. Omega, because I was running the Gamma package. Very, very good. Snipe that card out of your opponent's hand. Basha, because it has a spin effect. Unfortunately, you cannot spin for every you do not spin for every worm monster you use to synchro into it. Instead, you spin for every different worm attribute that you use to synchro for it. So you can't spin for every Mirror token you use to summon it, unfortunately. But then again, it says so on the card. Number of different attributes. Just some basic reading comprehension. Chaofeng is really good because it can lock out earth monster effects when you summon it using Zefra as your synchro material. And versus a spiral player, they will be forced to use Tough to try to out it. And even if they do kill it with Tough, you're allowed to search a tuner monster from your deck once Chaofeng is destroyed, and that will usually net you something like a hand trap such as Ogre, Ash Blossom, Gamma, or even Gofu if you know that they can't continue off from there. And then Trish, because Trish swings the board back into your favor. It heavily disrupts your opponent. Non-targeting banish is just really, really good. And I summoned it a couple times today. I think the only card I didn't summon was Basha, but that's fine. I'd still keep it. It's just in case you need it, And then for the side deck, ran triple Epsilon. In theory, I was planning to use it to hit stuff like D-Barrier, Reincarnation, Time Pendulum Graph, Mind Crush, the works, but just never got to resolve it because the one time I used it on an artifact Sanctum, they were able to Mind Crush the Epsilon out of my hand. I'd probably change it for like Drolls or something. I didn't really like the Ghost Reaper and Winter Cherries in testing. I also ran 2 Gamma Seals and 1 Sticky String Kaiju because sometimes you need an out to Sleeper as well as being able to deal with Masterpiece or Borrelo just in case. Dark Hole, because I wanted to be able to combo Dark Hole with Spell Shattering Arrow versus a Decode Sleeper board in order to essentially completely wipe them. Triple Cyclone, because I don't really like this deck doesn't really like back row, and I wanted to hit stuff like Anti-Spell or have it be pretty good versus Magicians. Spell Shattering Arrow, the third one, because it's quite effective versus Spirals and Magicians to an extent. And then rounding it out, I ran Double Strike. I never saw it. I'd probably still run it though. Another Unending Nightmare, because it just closes out games and prevents your opponent from accessing some important face-up spell cards. And the second Pillars, because if you go first, you're probably going to be able to Pendulum Summon out Zefra and negate, and you'll be able to Pendulum Summon Zefra once again on your second turn and 9 Pillars, I believe, is better than Zefra Divine Strike. It's also good for stopping evenly matched. So I just want to clarify that many of the choices I made for this deck were based on theory and changing up how this deck is supposed to run, or what is considered to be a good hand. So I bumped the total main deck was 52 cards because I wanted to have enough of a diversity of cards to deal with certain boards. And unfortunately, when I was running about 40-45 cards, I kept breaking with the amount of hand traps I was drawing. So I increased the card count in part so that I would still be able to access hand traps, but not have them clog my hand as much. In addition, I think Pot of Desires, people don't typically run this in a Zefra deck because they say that you have a bunch of one-ofs that are important, such as your counter traps. But in my opinion, in the hands that I was drawing, during test hands, they weren't exactly hands that I could win off of, or I couldn't win off of Desires being another scale. I needed 2 cards, and that's what Desires allows me to do. Attempt to draw into 2 cards that can save me, because I also run a bunch of value cards such as Scapegoat and Raigeki, that it also gives me the chance to use those to attempt to out the board. Just drawing into extra outs is a potentially really good thing. So I'll go a little bit into some of the combos that I used. I'd also like to note that for my extra deck, most people know about the Stardust Charge play, where you summon out Stardust Charge and then have Oracle be Chainlink 2 to stack a monster, and then Stardust Charge effect Chainlink 1 so that you can draw said monster. But I felt like that card was just win more for me, because every time I summoned it, I was already winning the game. So it felt kind of useless. I prefer proactive cards that allows me to break a board rather than cards that, okay, I'm already winning type deal things. Because if you're already winning, you don't need that extra. You don't necessarily need that extra oomph. Okay, let's go into the Destrudo combo. So off of Armageddon Knight, you normal summon it, send Destrudo to the graveyard, special summon Destrudo, sink into 7, so that you can bring out wherever Yazi went. So you can bring out Yazi. And then you use Yazi effect to pop a card on their side of the field, as well as Yazi. And then you summon out Mermer. You use Mermer effect 3 times, bringing out 3 tokens. And then at this point, you have a variety of plays. You will most likely link 2 into a Miss Starboy. And then what I like to do is, since Mermer is now level 4, you can sync Mermer level 4 with the level 1 token to make Chanbara. This is 6,500 damage without your Pendulum Summon, which is pretty good. I didn't run Crystron metrics because I felt like a 3K beater was just kind of meh compared to just trying to game them right then and there. Another option is that if you're able to pendulum summon out a level 4 monster, you will be able to make Trish instead of Chanbara, and Trish will be 3200 in addition to banishing 3 cards on your 3 of your opponent's cards, which was pretty good for, reversing the situation. I also used Armageddon Knight / Destrudo coupled with the level 2 Zefra Naga in order to summon Trish out a couple of times. Alright, I guess I'll just go into my matchups for the day. So, it was a 9-round regional, and I played, I believe, my first round opponent no-showed, and then my second round opponent was a World Chalice player. I won 2-0, but I lost the die roll. There wasn't very much anything notable about the matchup. He was a nice guy, but he didn't make anything particularly hard for me to deal with. Let's see. Round 3, I played against Spirals. I won the die roll, but I lost game 1 because I misplayed, because I kind of used Armageddon Knight as a way to make out Yazi and treat Yazi as a bad Denglong so that I won't die, but it didn't work out because I kind of forgot about evenly matched and I got hit by it. But that was probably the only game I lost to evenly matched. Game 2, I went first. I used Eater of Millions to just put in work and banish all his important cards, and Spell Shatterings were able to just, close out the game. Game 3, I kind of figured that he'd try to make me go first, so I sided in accordingly. I kind of bricked, but I had enough traps to ensure that the game state was simplified, and my Eater of Millions got pumped up to 4K plus because I attempted to resolve multiple desires. He ashed, I think, all of them, all 3, and he evenly matched me multiple times, but that just made my Eater bigger and bigger, and he just couldn't out it. Nice guy. Round 4, I was against Spirals. I won the die roll, but I lost the match, 1-2. Game 1, I opened okay. I tried to use Armageddon Knight to send Destrudo to the graveyard so I could just end on a Yazi plus an Unending Nightmare, but I wasn't able to because he ashed it. He wasn't sure what I was playing. It kind of grinded for a while, but I just scooped because I knew I couldn't swing the game back into my favor. Game 2, I opened really well, and I opened, I think, double negate with Zefra on board. He did Magical Spring me, but that's not that great versus Zefras, to be honest. Game 3, he went first. He made the Sleeper Decode board, and one of them was the Twisters. I didn't draw enough stuff to out his board, and I scooped. Nice guy, though. Round 5, against Spiral, I lost the die roll. I opened pretty well for going first hand, but I wasn't going first, so I just scooped the moment I saw he was making the Unbreakable board. Game 2, I tried to make the opponent go first as a trick, but this is where my inexperience and lack of physical play bit me. It just wasn't good enough to break his board. At that point, I was feeling kind of bad because it didn't look too good for being able to top, but when you're at your lowest point, you're open to the greatest change. Round 6, I played against Spiral. I lost a die roll, but I was able to disrupt them with Ogre on their turn, and then I OTK'd him with the Mirror combo. Game 2, he opened the Decode Sleeper combo. I opened a Spell Shattering and a Gamma in my hand. So I decided not to Gamma them on their turn, and on my own turn I activated both my scales. He attempted to pop with Sleeper, and I chained Gamma. He didn't respond, so I chained Spell Shattering, and I just nuked his board. And he basically scooped at that point. Round 7, I also played against Spirals. I won the die roll. I chose to go first, and I blind made Chao Feng by pendulum summoning Zefra New and normal summoning Ghost Ogre. And I searched a Divine Strike with the New and stacked an Eater of Millions. He toughed it away, but then that allowed me to grab Gamma to my hand, and eventually he scoops because he's unable to play through all my disruptions. Game 2, he chose to go first, and I just couldn't really break the board. This is when I Epsiloned his Sanctum, but he Mind Crushed the Epsilon. Game 3, I went first. I Pendulum Summoned Nude and tried to accrue advantage. Eventually, he gets the New off my board, and I Pendulum Summon 2 monsters from hand instead of a New from extra, because the game state has been pretty simplified. He's surprised that I don't Pendulum Summon Zephyr New, and then I normal summon Ghost Ogre and I Trish him while stacking Eater of Millions. At that point, he has no cards in hand, field, and nothing useful in the graveyard, so he just scoops. Funnily enough, he said that it was OP for me to stack my own deck. I just found it funny because he's a Spiral player and complaining about not even being able to add the card to hand, just stacking it. Round 8, I played against Spiral. I won the die roll. I blind made Chao Feng and just controlled the game from there, pretty much like the last match. I feel like when you're forced to go into a tough in order to try to break Chao Feng, but then you also know that you're probably gonna get the tough effect negated, it's pretty hard for a Spiral player to just come back from that, because I don't feel like it's that optimal for you to attempt to tough multiple times while being unable to summon out an agent because of Chao Feng. And even if you do, the Chao Feng will get a Gamma, most likely, and just prevent you from even being able to Helix. Game 2, I mind gamed this guy so hard. He made the Decode Sleeper board with one set, and I assumed it was the Spiral mission. So I went, on my turn, I set up scales, and I Pot of Desires into a Pilica and Terraforming. He does not pop my scales for some reason. I guess he was going to pop whatever I summoned. So I Pendulum summoned 3 cards, 1 Zephyr New, along with 2 Zephyrs from hand, and he doesn't strike it, so I think I'm pretty good at that point. I search out Zephyr Naga after I grab it with Providence from the Zephyr New, and then on normal summon, I say that, shoot, I screwed up, I searched the wrong thing. He checks and makes sure that there aren't any tuners on board, and I ask him if he will respond to the summon. He says no, he doesn't pop anything with the Sleeper, and I link 4 into a Borreload Dragon and steal his Sleeper. At that point, he then Dark Holes me and blows up my Borreload, and the Sleeper is sent to his graveyard at the end of the turn because it's still equipped with Last Resort, but Borreload effect makes it go to the graveyard but not destroyed. He and I try to grind for a little bit. I resolve Pot of Desires 3 times in a row, but I don't really draw anything good. Eventually, I'm able to make Chao Feng, and I have 3 cards left in deck. And I stack my last Eater of Millions and draw it the next turn. And at that point, my Eater of Millions is at 4k plus. And he goes, draws a card. It's the Foolish Burial Goods. Unfortunately, he only has Earth monsters in his graveyard, so he can't do anything. So he scoops. He was visibly salty, but that's how the game goes. Round 9, last round, I lost a die roll. I was playing against Spirals. Game 1, he does a cool thing where he 1-for-1s and activates Wear Off Thou to add Droll to hand. I ogre his Helix, and he summons out an agent, equips it with the Last Resort, passes. At this point, I know he has 2 cards in hand, one of which is a Droll. I opened a Gamma and Ogre and Terraforming, so I'm pretty confident at that point. On my turn, I set up Scales, and he maxes me, and then I Gamma him, and he immediately scoops, because he can't play out of it. Game 2, I open an Ogre and Pot of Desires, and he chose to go first, but he just sets one face down Spell Trap and passes. On my turn, I activate Desires first, and on resolution he draws me, except the second card I drew off a Pot of Desires was a Gamma, and I didn't banish a driver from the Pot of Desires. So I chain Gamma to it, and make an Omega, rip a card from his hand, and Pendulum Summon 2 Zefra News. At that point, I just controlled the game and win. And yeah, so that's it pretty much for what happened at the tournament. I chose to include a ton of value cards in my deck just to generate advantage outside of using the Zefra engine. And I must say that some shoutouts to my friends at Davis Cards and Games. Thanks for coming with me to this regionals. Good shop. Shoutouts to Peter Nishimura, Martin Ortiz, Martin Lara, Michael Fong, Michael Yen, all of you guys for play testing with me and talking theory with me on Dueling Book. And shout out to Zachary Anita for helping discuss what to fear from the meta. And that's it for my deck profile. Thank you for watching. Alright, bye.